Welcome to the Earning Freedom Mastermind Program. I am Michael Santos with michaelsantos.com and prisonprofessor.com. Really excited to continue this episode of Success After Prison, how I built assets worth $1 million within 2 years of release from 26 years inside, and how you can succeed too. This is an audio version of the book that I recently wrote. I wrote this book specifically for people in prison. I'm currently going to be reading the 10th episode, so if you haven't been following along, it's really simple enough to do. Just visit the earlier episodes that are available on the Earning Freedom podcast or the Success After Prison podcast. They're all numbered, and you can start with number 1 and catch up to us, or if you'd rather, you can visit my website at michaelsantos.com and enter your email, and I will send you an automated digital version of the book right now for free, no cost to you, just to try and spread this empowering message that I learned from masterminds. Masterminds like Socrates, who is really was influential in changing my life, but many other masterminds as well. Now, I make this available for free again through iTunes on my 2 podcasts, on my 2 websites back here, michaelsantos.com or prisonprofessor.com. Give away more content that I sell. Why? Because I am absolutely committed to demonstrating that people who face struggle or challenges can begin sowing seeds for a better outcome. They can begin sowing seeds for a life of success, prosperity, meaning, relevance, happiness, fulfillment. But it doesn't happen by accident. We need to learn from people who have walked this path before. That's what I did. That's what I try and show through these podcasts. So each of these, again, are in 20-minute episodes. Right now, I'm going to resume reading from my book. So if you see me, my eyes going across it is because I am reading on a screen. And I'm also sometimes looking over here on this screen because I've got to make sure that my audio is being recorded. See, I'm a one-man operation. I don't have a big staff. I have a full-time job, but I am deeply committed to sharing the messages that empowered me through the journey. Why? Because I know that other people apply them to the extent that they do, to the extent that they learn and listen and learn from masterminds. They too can overcome the challenges that they are enduring right now. They too can become successful. They too can become something more than anyone would expect, but it doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen by accident. What happens by accident? Failure. If you want success, you've got to be willing to put in the work. And that's what this is all about. Putting in the work early and sowing seeds that are going to plant a wonderful garden that you can bear fruit from for the rest of your life. Now, I told you I learned these lessons from masterminds. I told you that the lessons that I sowed early in my journey had an enormous influence on my ability to come back to society, to meet people like Lee, people who ran businesses that did hundreds of millions of dollars in revenues, and have him extend opportunities for me. These are the lessons that I learned from masterminds, including Steve Jobs, right? I like to quote Steve Jobs. He was another mastermind that I learned a lot from. And he said, the good artists copy ideas, but great artists steal ideas. And to prepare for success, I copied ideas from the most successful masterminds I could find, whether they lived thousands of years ago or whether they served a time alongside me in federal prison. As I saw it, masterminds were all around us. And that brings me up to another point. Sometimes when I go into prisons, or frequently when I go into prisons, a couple of things happen. The first time when people see me, they say, that fool was never in prison, right? But what they don't realize is that their perceptions of me today really are what I hoped. I hoped that I would be able to go through 26 years in prison, come back to society, and have nobody know that I served a day inside. But I want the same for every other prisoner. You see, sometimes when people accuse me of having never been in prison, they're doing it because they don't think I look hard enough or solid enough or whatever the case. But the reality is, my vision for success, my goal, is to help everybody who wants to emerge from that type of struggle, that type of challenge, be able to transition into the workforce, transition into the business community, transition into a life of as a contributing, meaningful life, a life of fulfillment and relevance. That's what I strive to show. And, but after I finish my presentation, a lot of times I get asked if I can mentor people individually. But the reality is I don't have the capacity. As you see, I am a one-man operation here. I do everything by myself, and I do it on my own time. I started my work this morning at 4 o'clock in the morning. Why? Because I'm so passionate about getting this stuff out there. And I'd love to build a business around it. I do continue to try to build a business because I have to be sustainable. But my point is, I just don't have the time to do individual mentoring for people in prison. My hopes are that I can scale and reach more people through this type of work that I am doing. But what's important to realize is that regardless of where you are today, you have masterminds all around you, and they can be your mentors. Question yourself on how your actions and choices influence the way those masterminds perceive you. If they perceive you as being worthy of their time, you will find that they will want to invest in you. Now, I cannot recall how many people invest time, energy, resources into my success, even though I didn't know them prior to my imprisonment. But they saw me. They saw me as being authentic, and they wanted to help. That's the point. If you're authentic, people will want to help you. And I found that I could will avatars through a stream of conscious will avatars into my life who would invest into my future. And I could do that while I was in prison, even serving 26 years. But I've been doing it since I've come back to society as well. And I want you to think what you can do if you embrace this mastermind strategy. Some of the people who invested in me along the way include, prison staff members who allowed me to maneuver my way into the right type of job, a job that would allow me to make progress toward, the independent goals that I set. Or staff members who allowed me to move into the right bunks so that I could avoid some of the volatility that complicates lives for so many other people, or staff members who went ahead and had the courage to look at me as a human being and waive certain factors on my case because I was convicted of a very serious drug crime. I was the leader of an enterprise called the Continuing Criminal Enterprise. Even though I was just a kid, I had this really serious charge. And so in order for me to get transition out into a minimum security camp, they had to do a waiver. Well, it took a unit manager a lot of courage to look at me and say, hey, this guy's worthy of it. He's earned his right. And boom, he submitted me as a candidate to have my Continuing Criminal Enterprise issue waived so that I could go to a minimum security camp. And that made a huge difference for me. I mean, that happened when I went from a USP to a medium to a low to a camp. Having people believe in me allowed me to get into universities even though I didn't have any money. Lawyers came into my life and they volunteered their time in an effort to advance my release date. The reality is, although I served every day of my sentence, I really felt a sense of inner liberty when I had these lawyers. One of them was a former he was a current sitting assistant U.S. attorney. And he wrote to me and said, I shouldn't be in prison. He read my work and he made an effort and put a team together of lawyers who worked for me for free, pro bono, to try and get me out of jail. Incredibly generous of their time. Mentors and educators would come visit me inside of the prison at their own expense. Publishers opened a platform for me to begin bringing books to the market. And other people in prison who became close friends of mine throughout the journey were masterminds. Investors provided financial resources that would allow me to advance my goals. Business owners agreed to open introductions for me upon release. In fact, I had so many people coming into my life. I even married the love of my life while I was inside of a federal prison with more than 10 years of prison ahead of me. Now, all of that happened because I was able to ask very early on the Socratic questions that really would help me grow and help me prove worthy of their support. And you can do this too. But just recognize that regardless of where you are right now, there are masterminds sitting around you right now. There are masterminds in that unit. And I don't know who they are. But I know that anytime you put one individual in the company of 200 individuals, there are going to be some people of influence within that group, right? And if you're inside of a jail or a prison, you're most likely you're around at least 100 people, maybe as many as 2,000 people. When I was in Fort Dix, New Jersey, there were, I think, 2,600 people on the compound. And you choose who you want to associate with. How do you choose? By every decision that you make, okay? By the words that come out of your mouth, by the way that you wear your clothes, by the time you wake up in the morning, by the television shows that you watch in the TV room, if you watch TV, by the games that you play, by the other people who are around you. All of this, for a mastermind, he's taken in everything. And so if you're walking around using the language of the penitentiary, if you're walking around dressed in a manner that suggests, I don't care, you have no sense of self and sense of presentation, if you are, not developing your vocabulary, not developing your speaking skills, not demonstrating that you're living with passion and energy and discipline every single day, well, you're not going to attract that 1 in 100, that 1 in 1,000 who can really change your life. And I met many who changed my life. I mean, when I was and if it would have happened only in one prison, then you could say, oh, he was lucky. But I opened opportunities in the penitentiary. I opened opportunities when I was in mediums. I opened opportunities when I was in low security prisons. And I opened opportunities when I was in minimum security camps. And all of that pattern is simply a pattern of presenting yourself, selling yourself, getting people to believe in you, to invest in you, to want to be a part of you. And if you live that way, you are going to overcome the challenges that derail success for so many people around you, that make it so many people around you who can't navigate their way out. See, regardless of whether I served time in a jail, a high security penitentiary, a medium security prison, or a low security prison, minimum security camp, it didn't matter. I always found masterminds, people like Lee, people who would show an interest and who wanted to help. And if this strategy only succeeded for me in a single minimum security camp, then people could say I was lucky. But I served 26 years in prisons of every security level. Whether I served time in high security, medium security, low security, correctional, it didn't matter. I always met masterminds. Some of them were extraordinarily successful financially. Some of them were extraordinarily successful in other areas of their life. But because they were successful, they had wide networks and they helped me connect, just as I'm urging you to do. Any prisoner could invite the same types of support into his or her life. First, the prisoners must begin by asking the types of Socratic questions that allowed me to find mentors. Don't ask my questions. First, you got to ask the questions for you. Then they need to create a plan. And finally, what is it? They need to visualize, plan, and execute the plan as the days turn into weeks, the weeks turn into months, the months turn into years, and for some, the years turn into decades. They have got to be executing their plan. The job I had with Lee's company satisfied Charles, my case manager in the halfway house. But since I had a place to work, Charles could authorize me to leave the halfway house each morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't have to return to the halfway house until around 8 o'clock in the evening. And on payday, I provided Charles with a copy of my check stub right on time and a money order for 25% of my gross wages. So long as I complied with his terms, he lived up to his word and allowed me to have all the liberty I needed to begin to build in my career. Now, a lot of guys might say, well, sure, it's easy for you to say you walked out of prison with $85,000. That's true. I walked out of prison with $85,000. But I walked into prison with nothing but a 45-year prison sentence. I walked into prison with no education, with no support network, with no financial resources, with no record of accomplishment. But what did I have? I can tell you, I had what I am trying to give to each of you. Okay? It is hope. I had hope. Why? Because as I said, I was inspired by a mentor, a mastermind who died more than 2,500 years ago. I read the story of Socrates. That story transformed my life. It caused me to look at the world differently. It caused me to begin asking those types of Socratic questions about what can I do while I'm in here to emerge successfully. That's what I'm urging you to do today. Start asking those questions of what you can do to emerge successfully. Start envisioning your prospects, your avatars. Who are they? What do they expect from you? And those types of questions you will find will open opportunities for you right now. And as you open those opportunities, you too may find or create new income streams, even while you're in prison. Even if it can't go to you, you can find ways, understand the rules, and then figure out how to work within those rules. I can tell you, when I started publishing, it began, my efforts first began by my writing a request to a staff member. I wrote to my case manager, and I said, look, I'd finished my education, and I wanted to begin writing for publication. And I said, is there any violation of rules me writing for publication? And she knew that I was very methodical in what I was doing. I was trying to document the record in case a problem surfaced later. So she said, let me send it to counsel. And so she sent it to the regional counsel, and I got it back, a letter from the regional counsel that said three things. As long as I wasn't earning an income, and as long as I wasn't inciting a riot or inciting disturbance inside of the prison, I was within my rights to write for publication. In fact, there's a policy in the Bureau of Prisons that said we encourage you to write manuscripts, but there's another policy that says you can't run a business. So I went to the captain and I said, look, this is what it says. As long as I'm not being compensated, and as long as I'm not doing this. Well, I don't have any issue about disturbances. Everything I write is positive. Everything I write is about showing people how to overcome struggle, how to become successful, how to deal with the world as it exists and not as we want it to be. But I knew that my writings would generate a revenue stream. The publishers would want to sign a contract. So I asked the captain first when I had the letter back from the general counsel. If I assign royalties to somebody else, that would mean I don't have access to those royalties. Would you have any problem with me doing this? And he gave me the okay. He said, as long as the money's not coming to you, you're okay. And so that's what I did. I assigned the royalties first to my sister, Julie, then later to my wife when I got married. And so the revenues that came from the books that I wrote, they went to somebody else. And because they went to somebody else, I didn't violate, and I was able to build a pile of savings that I leveraged in other ways, which I think I'm going to describe later. If I didn't, I certainly described it in Earning Freedom. But the reason that I walked out of prison with $85,000 is because I learned lessons from masterminds, and those lessons empowered me. They gave me the foresight. They gave me the hope that I could build something different. And that's my job today. My job is to communicate a message to people who live without hope. Now, I know that there are some people who are receiving this message have life prison sentences. And I know that there are some people who are receiving this message that are outside, and maybe it feels like they're serving a life prison sentence because they're so trapped in some type of a world that they don't know how to break free from, whether it's a bad job or a bad relationship or a bad self-esteem issue. The point I am trying to make is that if I can get through 26 years, this strategy helped me get through 26 years as a prisoner, and didn't only get me through it, but allowed me to come back to society really strong and create new opportunities that would allow me to build an asset portfolio that's worth more than $1 million in less than 2.5 years. Well, I got news for you. It can work for you. And as we get on with this story, I'm going to be presenting the opportunities that are working for me that you can seize as well. But I'm 100% authentic, and there's nothing I say, think, or do that is inconsistent with this plan, this mastermind strategy. In the next episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about how I began to build it. As I get out of the halfway house, that's really when my life starts to accelerate. But I wanted you to know that if you didn't get the back issues, you want the digital book, just go to michaelsantos.com, sign up for my mailing list, and a digital book will be sent to you right away. You can order a copy of the book right from my website, or any of the courses right from my website. I do ask that you rate and review my shows on the different social media platforms, whether it's iTunes, rate and review, subscribe on YouTube, like on Facebook, follow on Twitter. What is the other one? LinkedIn, connect. All these ways. These are ways that I connect with the world. I've been doing this for 30 years now. Well, not 30, but since I went to prison. Big connecting, building strength, building relationships. And because I do the work, opportunities open, just as they're going to open for you. I am Michael Santos with michaelsantos.com. We'll be back with another episode of Success After Prison on the Earning Freedom Network. Thank you again. Bye-bye.